Okay, this is the my first news article assignment, and I'm going to be looking at an article called "China Fails to Stop Racism Against Africans Over COVID-19." And this is from The Guardian, and it was released. Let's see when it was released. Huh. I'm not sure when it was. I'm not sure when it was released, but I'm just going to put the link along with the assignments that I submitted. So just to quickly summarize, this article is talking about how there's been multiple like instances of discrimination against Africans in the Chinese country, and this includes not letting Africans into restaurants, Africans who have been there for years getting evicted from their place of living, and just like general xenophobia concerning Africans. And there's been two sides to this. This is really problematic for Chinese African relations, as we talked about before in this. Yeah, I'm going to get to that later, but from the African side, they said that this is bad for Chinese African relations, and also Chinese officials do believe that this is just a bid to kind of smear their name to the ground, and they keep on affirming that they're not in any way actually they're not in any way of either one, they're not in any way having these policies implemented, or two, it's just being blown out of proportion. And just I guess to the flip side of that note card, the way that connects to what we were talking about in class is the concept around China being a colonial power, and I think that's a very interesting conversation to have, because I think is more than just having these multiple projects that are set up in Africa or in these African nations, such as uranium mining plants in Nairobi. I think it's also about the mind of being a colonizer. So essentially, if we look to colonization still by what in the past and currently with these Western powers, they still follow this trend where they view Africans or just Black people in general as lesser than. And the fact of the matter is, you can see that kind of replicated when it comes to these Chinese relations with these African nations, despite the virus starting there, right? Despite the virus starting there, and despite usually, if you even looking to Black people around the world, they do express this kind of solidarity when it comes to the xenophobia that is being aimed at Chinese people around the world. This kind of that solidarity, but you don't see the same solidarity in China itself, and it just further raises the question that if China is indeed this colonial power, you can definitely see them repeating these methods of anti-blackness that has been kind of a problem in their country for a minute. So so just to kind of quickly summarize, China fails to stop racism against Africans over COVID-19, and they believe that essentially it's because they believe that these are being blown out of proportion. But I think that the way this connects to the topics that we're discussing is that this is just China acting as a colonial power. And when you're acting as a colonial power, we are trying so hard to be quote unquote a white colonial power, you're going to see this kind of discrimination and this kind of racism resurface, because China has for a long time had a problem with their anti-black notions against Africans or just anyone who has a darker skin tone than they do.